yeah, we'll wait a few more moments for people to arrive, and yeah, then we'll take you through how we made our track Freefall. We're in absolutely no rush. We'll kind of break down, kind of look at a combination of what like the mixing, the production, the composition elements of the track. So welcome. We will stall just a little bit as we perhaps get past 10 people. Welcome to the 6 of you that are here.
Cool. Hey, it's going up. So yeah, we're this is our studio where we wrote Freefall and a load of our other tracks. So yeah, to make sure we show people around it a little bit while we're waiting for people to come in.
Yeah, welcome. We've got we've got a little plant here. We've got a plant here called Barry. He's the 4th member of EYNKA. What else we got?
Banana plant. We've got the Moog sub 37 synths. So these are pretty integral to our process. So we use that for a lot of low end sounds. We use a Prophet Rev 2, modeled by Josh. I don't know if you can hear that. But we use that for a lot of more expansive synths, leads, pads. Behind Dave there, we've got a rack of Electron stuff. How would you describe them? Like samplers, sequencers.
Yeah, sequencers.
And then up at the top, that's a Zen delay, native instrument Zen delay, which is really, really amazing analog delay. Designed by Ninja Tunes.
I don't know if you guys can see that. This is a complete control S88 full-size weighted keyboard. I'm in love with it personally. Wanting to take it out of the studio, but I'm not allowed.
Newest addition to the family, we've just got an Ovation Peak, which we're just learning to use at the moment. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then we've got a load of Universal Audio stuff. So
all the subtitles as we're speaking. I feel like I'm in court. Someone's taking everything down. It wasn't me.
Cool. So yeah, we'll get started quite soon. We're just looping the intro at the moment. So
just wait for a couple more people joining. So yeah, we'll just keep talking rubbish until there's a few more in there. But those of you who are there, feel free to sort of announce yourselves and let us know where you're from. It'd be lovely to know kind of where everyone's tuning in from. And thanks for taking the time out of your Thursday to want to join us and listen to us break this down for you. We hope you like the track. As Dave said, we're not in a particular rush, but breaking down an entire dance record is quite a lengthy process, so we're gonna endeavour to try and condense it down as much as possible for you. So
Definitely.
So
here's the project file. So we, in preparation for this live stream, we needed to get the project file down into. We needed to cut it down a fair amount. We were initially on 300 tracks, so we managed to get it down to. Was that 123? So hopefully it's not too much of a chaotic minefield to kind of navigate through.
Yeah, we don't normally advocate having 300 tracks. It just somehow happens. But
truth be told, it's taken us like 6 years to start not doing that. So just like, I guess before getting into anything in terms of breaking down tips and techniques for production, that's definitely something you want to avoid taking from us. It took a week of like
100%.
Yeah, it was a real nightmare to get it down to that number.
Yeah.
Wicked. Well, should we start with
before playing the track through?
That's it. Yeah. So before we kind of go into it and break down, like we said earlier on, the production, the mixing, the composition elements of the track, and how we made it. I think we'll just start by just playing it through from start to finish, and we'll kind of navigate our way around the project file so you can kind of see how it's structured, how disorganized we might be with our arrangement, but how beautiful our colour coding is.
Yeah.
Wicked. So
shout out to Billy. Thanks for joining me.
So I feel like we need to do some kind of like an official. We are EYNKA, and this is our track.
Breakdown. Let's do it.
Freefall. Oh, don't worry, technicals.
First of many technicals.
Hey,
Easy guys.
from Bristol, hey.
Shout out Morgan. Nice one for joining us, George.
It's always easy.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, you've just joined us. We're going to be breaking down our track Freefall, which was released last Friday on Stress Records, and yeah, just taking you through all of the as many of the techniques from the production to the writing to the engineering as possible in whatever time we've got. And so yeah, we'd love to get any of your questions. We'll try and answer them all in a Q&A at the end, but we thought first maybe we just like break down the track for you. So
let's dive in.
Yeah,
Chris, why don't you start?
We'll say big shout out first to Charlotte from London, local. Thanks for joining us, and Sean as well, big up.
Yeah, big up Sean, big up Charlotte. Yeah, so we thought we'd just maybe start with the foundation of the track, which is the groove. So that was at 0, right? The output.
Oh, it's a little bit less.
It's a little bit less. So we're just going to get the levels right. We don't want to blast your eardrums. So the groove is like super important to this track. It's really what gives it a lot of its energy. So we'll just give you a quick rundown of that. So starting off with the kick. So normally we try and tune our kicks. So that kick is tuned to the root note of the track, which is a G. Then now I'm going to put in the main percussive groove behind the track. This is where the groove for the whole track started off. So now basically what we tried to do with this track is make a lot of the groove come from the low end. So now what we're going to do is add in the low end elements that make it kind of bump along, and they're really kind of percussive and short. Don't know if you can hear them.
Yeah, let us know, guys, any issues with levels, or if the balance of us speaking and the instrumentals not coming out clear enough for you.
So that's giving you the low end groove. So yeah, again, really short percussive sounds with quite a bit of saturation. Nothing overlaps, and they just dance around each other. So the next thing is the bass line, which I'm just going to solo now. So this, don't know if you can hear that, that's a sub bass, and that was recorded in with our Moog Sub 37 up there. I don't know if it's worth, is it worth?
I don't think we can monitor it.
I don't think we can monitor it. It's cool. If we were able to, we had a couple of technical issues setting this up. If we could, we'd show you exactly how we could make this, but I'll just give you a quick rundown now of how to get this kind of sound, and then if you've got any more questions, just ask us. But yeah, it's basically doing a saw wave, playing that an octave above where you want your sub bass to play, filtering it down, dialing back in a sub bass, which that's got its own sub bass oscillator, an octave below it, and saturating the whole thing. And the effect is that basically, I don't know if you can hear that, but basically you get a really warm sound. You get a really warm harmonic sound. So now I'll just play it with the kick, and we'll play it with that groove, and we'll play it with the rest of the low end groove information, and you can see how everything works together. And we make sure that that main sub that we just soloed doesn't clash with the percussive sub bass, using multi-band side chaining. So I don't know if you can see that, but that is the information that's on the Moog bass channel, and that's being triggered. It's a side chain that's being triggered with the percussive bass hits. It basically just means that they fit really well together. So yeah, nothing's overlapping, nothing's clashing. So yeah, had to rattle through that. But if you've got any more questions to do with how to make your bass work together or anything about that, just drop a question in the comments. I think Dave's going to take you through the rest of the drums now.
Wicked, cool. So what we'll do is we'll just go right back to the kick. So the kick's tuned to the root note of the track, which is G. There we go. And it's quite a short kind of eighth note kick, so not not too long. I'm going to add that blip groove that Chris introduced a moment ago, that is kind of like the foundation for the groove. And let's start adding the bit. So we've got a rim shot. Now the rim shot works with the clap. The clap is kind of essentially just very high frequency information. It's almost just like white noise, but the rim shot, what the rim shot does is give it some body. So if we take that out and then put it back in, it just gives a little bit more of a thwack. It is quite subtle. That's the rim shot. So we add the clap in. Let's have a look. And we're going to work our way down. So this is a really interesting layer. This is basically white noise that we fed through a plugin called the Tremolator, which is made by Sound Toys. It's an incredible plugin, and Chris is going to show you how to use it in a bit. We're not going to demonstrate it with this particular sound, but it's essentially getting white noise, like a long sustained bit of audio of white noise, and trimming it down using an envelope to trigger a particular groove that we chose. And this is a really swung groove that kind of really, really helps push around the feel of the groove of the track. So then we've got some kind of straighter elements in there. We've got a cutting hi-hat. Now this is essentially just white noise again, but it gives a lot of kind of energy, and it's kind of like the driving, very center part of the drums. It gives it a lot of energy. Then we've got some, you have to bear with us, there are a lot of layers to the drums. We've got some 16th hi-hats. These are just 808 samples, again, quite heavily swung. Then we've got, you'll notice this if you're listening on headphones, but this is a panned, this is a hi-hat that's panned quite far left. Possibly a terrible option, we don't know. Like we tried to get some kind of width with our drums, but that's panned hard left. Now this one here is another one that's panned hard left, and it's designed, if you can listen out, it's kind of more like a live ride layer. But if I add the hard hi-hat that I just showed you a moment ago, and if I take that new hi-hat out, the new ride layer out, so that's giving you the kind of percussive cutty layer, this is giving the texture and the organic feel. So let's put all this stuff back in. Okay, so the beat's starting to take shape now, but there's other things that we want to add. We've got a lot of information on the left. We need to balance it out with information on the right. So here we've got a shaker, if you listen out carefully. I'll just solo that so you can hear it. Right, let's put everything else back in. Okay, now this one here is quite an interesting one. So hi-hat pan man. So we called it pan man because there's a plugin by Sound Toys, which is an auto pan plugin. It's great plugin, and this is just basically going left, right, left, right, left, right, and is overly swung. We've intentionally made this very, very swung to, again, just make the beat feel really loose. We really didn't want to feel like we were sticking to like a simple mechanical grid. Like we want it to feel loose, swung, maybe slightly imperfect. So if I add everything in now, okay, so we're almost there. So the next thing is this. You might not notice it if I put it in. See if you can figure out what it is. So we've called it hi-hat open sizzle, and it's basically just doing something very similar to the hi-hat, the cutting hi-hat here. So look, if I go back to this hi-hat cutting, it's kind of quite percussive, doesn't really have a huge amount of dynamic, like kind of looseness feel to it. It's kind of quite blocky, quite compressed, whereas this
adds it more tail, doesn't it?
Gives it more tail. It's adding a little bit of sizzle to the top. It's essentially just white noise again, but it's got a bit of a tail to it, so it's giving it a bit more, I don't know if you can call that more of an acoustic feel. I mean, it's not really acoustic feel, is it? It's just, but it's adding character for sure. Okay, let's add all these back in.
One thing to mention probably as well is really important thing is a lot of these things seem like such subtleties that you almost don't really notice, but the sum of the little increments kind of add up to actually be really noticeable, and that's definitely something just to keep in mind with any element of music production. I think not letting things kind of slip through the cracks and being quite thorough with the minute details does sort of make the sum of it all
Definitely. And I think we do kind of obsess over detail, and it means that it takes us a very, very, very stupidly long time to finish songs. Anyway, look, some last elements of the beat. We've got an amen break here.
So that's an amen break, but it's put through a tremolo plugin. Solo it quickly.
Yeah.
So it's basically it's like the classic amen break, but you can hear it's been put through Soundtoys tremolator and swung really hard. So it just gives it a bit more of a roughness to the beat, a bit more of a grittiness. But it's swung and it's tight and it wraps around the groove.
How would you describe an amen break as well, just for the listeners?
It's just a classic jungle. It's a classic funk break, which is used in it's just used in a lot of like jungle and like speed garage and hip hop and stuff.
And just lastly, there's some other layers that we got here, some toms, some other amen hits, and all together it sounds like this. Sounds like this. Okay, so I'll quickly talk through the processing on the John Master bus. If any of you are interested, or producers, mixing engineers, this is our plugin chain. So whatever track we work on, we usually use the same kind of processing. So there'll be an element of saturation, there'll be an element of compression, there'll be an element of EQ, there'll be some parallel processing that we might do. So some of these plugins you could change for other equivalent plugins. I think for years we used the SSL G-Bus compressor pretty routinely on our tracks, but this plugin is a UAD emulation of the API 2500. This is an amazing compressor. It's got such beautiful tone to it. And I actually discovered this from watching Disclosure's Twitch breakdowns of their tracks. You can watch a lot of them on Soul State on YouTube. They are super informative. And I've taken influence from some of the tips and techniques that were given in a particular, I can't remember which one it was, but this is on one of their tracks. They use the API. So I haven't looked back since using this plugin. So you've got, we're doing about 3 dB of gain reduction, and quite a slow attack, so that's letting the transients in, that's letting the punch. If I bring that in, that's going to squash the drums. If I open this up, it's going to let the initial transients of the beat through. We usually do a ratio between about 1.5 and 3, don't we? But we're super gentle compression here. It's only 1.5, so it's all terminology. 1.5 to 1 ratio we've used here, so really gentle and quite a fast release. So we've got a slow attack to let the transient through, we've got a fast release to kind of clamp, to release the compressor to let more information through. And we've got a high pass here, filter, which basically means it's not being triggered by any of the low end. And if I turn that off and on, it's really subtle, but there is a tone there. And it can be quite extreme when you compress drums. So one thing that's quite nice to do is go for something that's slightly more extreme and then back off on the mix. So this mix knob here allows us to do work in parallel. So that's the compressor. If we move on to this is a UAD emulation of the Studer A800. This is a tape machine emulation. This is just adding color, kind of harmonic saturation, and we're not absolutely smashing this to pieces. We're just, I'll show you what it is before, after, before and after. It's really subtle, but it is adding a bit of colour. Moving on to the next thing, we're doing more saturation. So this is a really popular plugin called the Oxford Inflator, and again it's quite commonly used to just make things feel bigger, and it does that through saturation. And you can You can do it in quite a transparent way. So the more I push this fader up, the more saturation I get. So we're being quite subtle. This curve on the right hand side has an effect on how bright and how dark the sound is. So if I push this up, it's making it more bright. If I pull this down, it's making it dark. It is quite subtle. There we go. Okay, so that's more saturation. Now, because we've had a couple of plugins that have added saturation, that has added quite a lot of information to the upper mids. So around about the kind of 4 kilohertz to 8 kilohertz, thereabouts. Those are frequencies that can become quite overwhelming with things like hi-hats, noisy layers. So what we've done is we've used the harsh hi-hat setting on this plugin called Soothe by Oak Sound. This is an amazing plugin, and it's like it helps attenuate, bring down resonant peaks within things you feed into it. So here you can see that underneath these 2 devil horns, we've got lots of information here, and that's the harsh elements of the hi-hat. So if I take that off, the hi-hats are brightened a little bit. So this is a great tool for attenuating harsh frequencies. Last thing we've done is we've gone into FabFilters Pro L. This is obviously not the most up-to-date piece of software for their limiter range. But look, all we're doing is taking away about a dB of gain reduction, just catching those transients, catching those peaks, and just kind of controlling it. It's very transparent. If you overdrive, if you run this plugin too hot, it introduces lots of artifacts, doesn't it? So we're just quite gentle with that. Lastly, we're sending this to some gentle bit of reverb. This is another UAD emulation plugin. It's called the AMT 140. This is a really cool plate plugin, a plate reverb, particularly good for vocals actually. But we've just used it to get like a little bit of ambience, room ambience. And lastly on the drums, we're doing some parallel distortion. Now this is the wet signal that we're getting from sending the drums out through this plugin. This is called the Thermionic Culture Vulture, and it's another UAD emulation, and it's just the beautiful distortion unit that breaks apart audio in a very musical way. So we use it a lot in parallel, we use it a lot on synths, and it's got such an amazing tone. We have done a low pass and a high pass of on the EQ here to not introduce loads of distorted, boomy bottom end, and also not introducing loads of broken apart, harsh, high frequencies. So this is just working on the mid-range, and we work this in parallel. So if I mute it, you might not be able to tell a difference unless you really focus. It's subtle, but again, like Josh said earlier on, like the sum of the parts of all of these make quite a big difference. It's difficult to hear all of them, individually what they're doing. So that's the drums, and we'll just quickly go on to the low end bus. So, one thing I should say, we didn't send the kick to the drum bus, which we probably, so this is our drum bus. There's no kick going there. We could have sent the kick there, and there would have been advantages to doing that, but we decided to send all our bottom end to one bus, including the kick, including all the bass that Chris talked about earlier on. And we took influence, not stole, from another production tutorial that we subscribed to, and that was, it was Anna and Weber. So if any of you like your driving techno, Anna and Weber do a production masterclass that's really, really good. And on one of their tracks, they basically bus everything, all their bottom end, including their kick, to a low end bus. And they use this plugin, and I've just been interested playing around with it. So we've got the kick, we've got all the bottom end information coming into this API Vision channel strip. And we're kind of driving it with a little bit of gain, like really subtly. And if you look in the middle here, this is our compressor, and we're dialing in about 3 dB of gain reduction with a 3:1 ratio, quite a fast release, and that's just gluing the bottom end together. We've got so much information in the bottom end, we wanted to make sure it was controlled. So there we go. I know I rattled through that super quickly, but that is our bottom end. Wicked.
Anyone have any, at this sort of juncture, any questions pertaining to Groove? And I think there's one about the vocals from Marty, but we'll get to that one.
We're going to do the vocal soon. Shout out to Richie Blacker in the comments.
Richie.
Good to see you. Shout out to Marty. Oh yeah, Marty will get back to you about the vocal soon. Big up Billy.
Nice to see the Stress family all joining.
Yeah.
Wicked. What should we talk about next? We've done the drums, we've done the bass.
Probably might as well start looking at the musical elements, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Josh, do you want to?
Unless there's no questions, yeah, let's get into the music then. So obviously, as Chris explained, your foundation of the house is your drums, your groove. So once you're happy, that's all tight and all locked in the way you want it, the next obvious thing to start contemplating is the musical element. There's no particular law. It's a common question I think that comes up is do you start with vocals or do you start with chords? In this particular instance, we found some really nice chords that we liked. Started with string patches, and Chris or Dave I think mentioned before about what the root note of the kick's tuned to, which was a G. So we went with basically a G chord. I hope you guys can hear this.
Oh, I'm not
here. Just the Prophet though.
I don't think.
So we've had a few technical obstacles in setting this up. I'm not sure if that's coming through. Oh, you might be able to hear it through the.
Why is it playing other weird things though?
I'd say just
so we'll avoid that.
So
I wanted to talk to you guys very briefly just about the actual chord structure and sort of illustrate it. I wonder if we can get the strings just soloed. You've already done it.
Yeah.
Cool. One thing I wanted to mention was just when laying down your chords, there's a temptation to overcomplicate things, which is not necessary at all. Something we've gone for here is just a nice straight G major chord, and really only every 8 bars do the actual chords resolve. And the reason for that is just to allow the track to breathe, all the other musical elements around the kind of soul of the chord, or the emotion, to still have space to sort of have their time on the stage, so to speak. So yeah, it's a nice straight G major chord with a little B minor to A major resolution at the end, and it's kind of like a tension release. So the chord creates the feeling, you hold it, and then we've gone for a nice little release every 8 bars. There's also every 32 bars another inversion, which kind of just breaks up geometrically the track and allows you to sort of, there you go, that reset the emotion again, coming into different sections. So that's sort of the basis of the chords. Just one other little thing I forgot to mention was we would always encourage, if you're new to songwriting and you're kind of picking chords and you just learnt how to map sort of your basic chords, don't be afraid to experiment with adding other notes to that kind of chordal spectrum, because you end up with some nice chord inversions and interesting harmonies that can set your music apart basically from other people. So that's just one quick thing to say.
What instruments did we use?
To the soundscape, we basically gone for Omnisphere, which is a beautiful library. We really like the sound of these strings. They're really warm, they're very cinematic, quite big sounding, I don't know if that's the right word, but quite expansive, and quite filmic, really fun to play with. They're kind of instantly engaging from a writing point of view. They help you push the mood basically, because they just feel nice to play with, I guess. However, not really a negative, but we'd always encourage layering then other strings, particularly if you are using the Omnisphere patch, because it's not very precise when you're moving through the melodies if you want to add a little bit more to it. So we went for Native Instruments session strings, which is sort of part of what you're hearing here actually. You've got the Omnisphere strings and a bit of session strings.
So we're just adding the session strings in now, which is here. So you've got Omnisphere strings up there, then session strings.
And then session strings. And this basically, just other layers that when you want to really highlight in the mix of everything, when everything's playing and you just want a particular line to cut through those natural bow sort of actions, it's quite important to find something that's a little bit more cutting in the mix, and go with that. So we've layered up there with session strings and Omnisphere. Then we created actually another, this is kind of interesting to mention, another, oh yeah, sorry, before I move on to that, these session strings are low pass filter, which kind of just like, we're using it at the end, as I mentioned about the rotations every 8 bars, the chords resolve, so we've sort of just filtered up the emotion and the energy of the strings each time that happens, so you kind of get that rising dynamic.
Using a really nice UAD filter called it's the Moog
Emulator.
multi-mode filter. It's really nice. It's got a really nice tone to it.
Yeah.
So
then this is something interesting to mention. Chris was showing off the hardware for those of you who were here at the beginning. We were using the Prophet Rev 2, which is a great piece of kit for pads and arcs, we were saying before. And in this case, we've taken a string patch and we've then added that low pass filter to it, which essentially what it can also do is just round off the sound, and it kind of makes it a little bit more warm and pad-like, as you can hear there. So when you want that kind of feeling in certain parts of the track, it's quite a useful thing to be able to use. You can hear they're a lot softer, they're a bit more subdued. And then we've also added a sidechain, so very subtly, which just kind of, where Chris was explaining at the beginning, the importance of everything just being locked in and tight, not overlapping, and where possible, just pulsing with the groove. So it's a very subtle thing, again, some of the small parts where it just kind of ebbs and flows and pushes very, very delicately against the groove, which does sort of make a difference.
It's like done in a way where it's like certain tracks, the sidechain can be used where you really hear it. It's a really audible effect. We're trying to use it here in just more like a feeling kind of thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
It's supposed to be subtle.
I think that's it in terms of the strings, and then just a solo here, like the next thing that was laid down to work in conjunction with the chords and just create that like delicate feeling was the piano. Interesting enough, we actually went with a stock Logic piano with this one. We've got really lovely piano instruments, software synths, but we went with this one. It's kind of a good example to show how your piano, whatever it is, can come alive so much by using the right kind of reverb. And this one we're absolutely in love with. It's a Lexicon 244, I think, and it's got this like choral, beautiful little shimmer to it. It's a really long release, I think like 10 to 15 seconds we've gone for, which is quite insane. But we were mentioning earlier about the placement of information, and by utilising the piano in quite a delicately placed and spacious way, we get away with being able to have that kind of a release. So yeah, I love this reverb. It's got that little choral texture to it, and it's a bit dreamy and heavenly. So to hear that in conjunction with the strings, you can see we're getting this nice just bed of emotion, really. And maybe just while we're there, just to jump into unless you had something you wanted to add there, Chris, just to jump into the breakdown.
Yeah.
Just to show a little technique, or at least what we've gone for in this particular track. So you don't have to do this, obviously there's different ways of approaching a breakdown, but ideally you're wanting to reset the emotion again and sort of build up everything with the layers from scratch. They all get their kind of chance to be showcased, I suppose. But when doing that, obviously you're dropping out the percussive elements. If it's a club track, you really want to keep that energy going. So what we wanted to show you here was just the use of the piano, which thematically links into all the other elements in the track, but where the percussion is providing that rhythm, we've now got the piano just delicately, it's not taking up much space, it's not invasive, it's just playfully kind of holding a little tension and drive the rhythm and the groove still going, without dominating and allowing other elements to come in. So you can hear the strings, the vocal, everything joins it to the peak in the track, which then will lead us into the drop, and probably a good time, come to the vocal later, talking about that, but maybe just to talk a bit about the main drop lead, which I think Chris, you were going to describe how we made it and why. So
So we're going to go to this. We've called it we've imaginatively called it the bleep synth, and this is made using, I don't know if you can see this, it's one of our favourite synths. It's also not plugged in at the moment, but it's a Roland, definitely works, it's definitely real. It's a Roland TB3, it's an emulation of the classic 303 synth, and it's just wicked. it's got loads of acid presets, and it's also got the sounds it can generate almost kind of take you back to that, I don't know, 90s psychedelic, ravey kind of thing. So, you know, kind of stuff that is reminiscent of maybe like an old Left Field record or an old Underworld record maybe. That's one of the things we love so much about it. So basically this sound was recorded in from that. We basically just jammed. We wanted to get like a psychedelic, groovy melody, just a bit of a weird melody that kind of doesn't quite resolve and just gives a vibe. And we recorded it in, we edited it. As you can hear, we wish we could actually demonstrate this to you, but we don't have, we're not able to right now. But basically, if you hear the clicks on that synth, we really heavily enhanced the transients on it using a plugin called Isotope Alloy, and that just gives it, makes it really percussive. Then we've got an Echo Boy delay plugin on there as well, which basically gives it the more rhythmic delay sound. And then also, if you can hear, if you focus in on the sound, we did some glitches as well, which are just like manually, us manually chopping the sample, which gives it that feeling. And now if we just play it with the strings, you can just hear how something we really enjoy doing is getting like an elongated chordal melody and then just doing something quite loopy over the top of it. And that's kind of what that's doing. It's just a really lovely, just a nice vibe, basically.
Maybe something just quick to add from a musical point of view as well, just is thinking of like melodic statements as like almost spoken sentences, and making sure that in a conversation everything is, you know, you have a question and you have an answer. So things thematically linked together. It's a really good way of ensuring that there's like commonality of feeling throughout your track, and nothing's too jarring or not really belonging. It's all part of the same world, and all the parts are kind of speaking in tandem with each other.
So I guess like the next synth would be, we'll have a look at this thing that we call the groove synth, and we'll just show you a little technique that we use to do this. So it's this synth. We're going to unsolo the strings. See here, we'll just show you how to do this in using the tremolator, using the tremolo plugin. So here's one we made earlier, Freefall groove synth. So this is the chain we're using for it. It's we'll show you the original sounds. It's basically this. That's basically just the lead, the main chords, just put through the Prophet with a load of noise. But then if you put a tremolator plug in, you see, you can draw in, can you see right at the bottom there, there's this sequencer, and we've drawn in a little pattern. If we put on the click track, or maybe actually, you might not be able to hear that, if we put in the kick, here we go. So there, you can see by changing the envelope, you can change how it sounds. It's really nice, you get some really nice organic effects with this. And just a couple of things to point out, we've really swung it to fit with the groove of the track as well. So yeah, without it, it's just way too much. With it, it's groovy. So yeah, so there you go, that's another little technique. So maybe it's time to chat about the vocal.
Just to add, I think that's the one really nice thing about that plugin, isn't it? The fact it's got, it's like, it's a tremolo, but it's got an envelope to it, so and a sequencer, so you can create some amazing grooves from essentially just anything really. You can feed noise into it, you can feed strings into it, you can feed anything into it and build a groove, like a percussive.
It's very malleable.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like groove bass.
So like going back to the drums we were talking about earlier on, we put an amen break through this, which gave it like a much kind of tighter, different feel to it. And other things, so we do this a lot. We love doing this with our tracks, using plugins to creatively shape or rhythmically shape sounds that might not be rhythmic. So a couple of other things we'd suggest having a play around with, or stuff that we do play around with in that way, are so it's Tremolator Filter Freak by Sound Toys is ridiculously good, and we'd really recommend that we use that in a lot of tracks. And then just using like the kind of more old school way of using a gate and sidechaining that with a signal. Again, we don't really have enough time to really go into those kind of things, but if you guys have got any questions about that, we'd be really happy to answer them. So we could geek out forever.
There actually is a question coming through from Sean. Sean says, amazing stuff. Thank you, Sean. Is it challenging to have so many elements in the mix simultaneously and still maintaining that subtlety? That's a really good question.
Definitely.
To answer that.
Well, I think it's in an ideal world, from like a production and a mixing standpoint, having the less elements you have, the easier it is, right? Because firstly, there's more things that are taking your attention. So I think that we're definitely reached like a critical mass, I think, in this song for how much stuff we can put in there, particularly if we look at the drums, there's definitely a lot going on. So I'd say the answer to that is, yeah, it is. When there's a lot of stuff going on, it's so easy to...
You're making your life harder.
Making your life easier from a mix perspective, but also less tends to be more. It's better to have less elements where each element really plays its role, right?
I really like that question for this reason as well, because the general rule of production, it's kind of like a running joke, right? It's such a common thing to want to oversaturate everything, and it takes sometimes years to kind of work out that mantra of less is more. However, there is something to be said for when you're layering more stuff in, you just got to make sure that you're really doing it correctly, and you're very sensitive to what the ears really jump into. There's some merit, I think, personally speaking, to being able to actually manage a quite big track with a lot of different parts, but getting away with them not really being noticed. It's almost like a complexity presented in a simple way.
Yeah, that's I really agree with that. I think a lot of tracks that seem really simple or just don't seem overcomplicated are actually is like complexity.
Yeah.
As long as it's presented as something simple and something that is just just makes sense in a way. That's really the best kind of balance.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
good question.
It's a really good question. Hopefully we've managed to
answer it
and do that in this track.
Wicked. What should we talk? Should we talk about the vocals?
Yeah, he was asking about the vocals.
So the question was, what was the vocals?
Sorry, I just turned that.
Sorry guys, that killed you. Vocally, yeah. So again, we could talk a lot about the vocal and specifics, but to answer your question, we sort of debated a little bit about, as I mentioned, we with this one we didn't start with the vocal, we started with the bed of the chords and just got the soul of the emotion that we wanted to kind of put over the groove, and then the process of many days and nights of just hearing thousands of ideas rattling around, and again that whole thing of less is more. We thought about kind of song structure, more words, but again, just adhering to that mantra of less is more. We ended up going with something quite simple. I think there's only one actual word, one sentence in the whole track. But a little bit about the vocals and the vocalist. We worked with this lovely girl who goes by the name of Ellie. Her artist name is Kintsuku. She's awesome, and as you can hear, we wanted for this something quite soft, angelic, delicate, maybe dare I say ethereal, and we thought Ellie absolutely smashes that kind of world. We were talking a little bit about the tremolator earlier, and that's something that we've gone for here. We also did this particular technique in Ascendance. For those of you who have heard that, just taking a legato line of a vocal or a phrase or a sentence and running it through the tremolator and creating a rhythmical pattern with it, which we've done here with the words Freefalling. That's that, and then that just kind of helps just that feeling of just pushing the whole groove and the shuffliness, the swing of it all forward. Then there's the resolving line we were mentioning earlier about the breaking up of sections, so that every 32 bars we get this beautiful resolving line, which happens to be, there we go, the only part where we actually hear like a clear audible spoken phrase. And if we just play that against the rest of the track as well, you just sort of hear how that works. And again, it's just that everything working in conjunction with each other to just like break up the sections and reset that emotion. And then last but not least with the vocal,
breakdown.
Into the breakdown. Yeah, this was really fun to do actually. And this was kind of a bit of a last minute addition, considering how big a feature it is now of the track. But yeah, we wanted to really create that soaring feeling, and we just had a lot of fun layering up this kind of angelic phrase, and then I think now Dave will go into a little bit of how we sort of process the vocals and why.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so why don't we look at just to quickly look at the plug-in chain and how we treat the vocals. If we look at the lead here, which is this main line, so what did we use? The first thing we did is we went into a 1073, a Neve 1073 preamp, and that is just giving some nice tone, some harmonic saturation, not driving it too much. Adding a little bit of bottom end at around 200, 220 hertz, just to give it a little bit of body. Then attenuating, like taking back a little bit more from around about, what was that, 4.8k. So that's 5k in the vocals is kind of, can be quite dominant, quite harsh. So we've just kind of pulled back a little bit to make it, so that'll make it smoother. And then just boosting the top end. This is just the shelf. This top bit here is just bringing air, bringing clarity into the sound of the vocals. So that's a beautiful preamp. We use that a lot, particularly for when we run a lot of our hardware through that, just coming straight into Logic.
New stuff tends to be great, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Then we're going into Pro Q3, which is, we're just simply low cutting. We're not doing anything too fancy here. And then we're going into a de-esser, wherever it is. Where is it here? So this is, I like this de-esser. This is quite a transparent one. It's called Precision de-esser, and
It's not
that's,
universal audio,
it is,
right?
isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, it's focusing at about 6k. So that's going to be your S sounds, your kind of noisy layers, and so you might notice a little bit on the F, but you can see it kind of kicking in for the F, and it's just making it smoother. And without it, it would basically sound, those frequencies might be a little bit overwhelming. We're then going into two compressors. So firstly, we're going into the 1176. This is an awesome compressor. Like, its tone is lovely. It's got quite a fast attack, so what that's doing is that's just catching the peaks and kind of just squashing them. Well, yeah, just the peaks. It's not even it's not being triggered that much. I think you can see it's only being triggered by the free and the fall. So it's just catching those louder parts of the vocal recording. It's then going into the Teletronics LA2A, and this is a really cool optical compressor that's perfect for vocals. And what that's doing is that's just squeezing just bringing down the dynamic range of the vocals and pulling them all together. And so you'll notice that that's being triggered for most of the. It's applying, it's applying gain reduction to the whole thing. But it's gentle. It's a gentle bit of compression. Then going into the Pultec, this is a really cool vintage EQ. Again, got a really nice tone to it, and that is we're just adding a little bit right at the top at 16k, and that's just introducing air. If I turn that off, on. It's quite subtle, but that's just lifting it again, like giving it clarity, bringing it to the front, introducing some air. And then we are, just because, well, I just put an EQ at the end just in case we're introducing any sub content from the compression. And then into Soothe again, the plugin we talked about earlier on. This is great for just taming those peaks, those harsh peaks, and we kind of focused on between 1 and about 14, 15k. There we go, and we're doing off that Echo Boy. So that's not being used, but we have got Echo Boy in the send. So all these sends here are effects that we're sending to. So we've got Lexicon Reverb again. This is like a 3-second haul, just the kind of
same one we had on the piano that I was talking about.
Yeah,
but I guess more of a subtle one,
more subtle,
natural one.
So that's dry. That's with a little bit of Lexicon haul. Now we've got the Echo Boy you talked about. And this is quite a cool setting. It's called Memory. And if I just solo this, it hasn't got any tops to it, so it's not interfering with like the clarity of the upper mid range of the vocal. It's just kind of sitting nicely behind it. So we've got that. We've got the Lexicon Hall. That is doing nothing. It's a fraud. That's doing nothing. That's a fraud. And what have we got here? Oh, this is cool. This is another Sound Toys plugin called Microshift. This is a chorus plugin that is just bringing a little bit of width to the stereo image. And what else have we got? And we've got a little bit more reverb. This is a fantastic plugin. Valhalla. I noticed one of you said, what is a plugin you can't live without? I think a lot of the stuff that a lot of the plugins that we've been talking about, Valhalla Room we use all over the place. It's such a versatile reverb, isn't it?
Yeah,
what other ones
really
do you think?
What other plugins can we live without? Echo Boy. Echo Boy is amazing.
Yeah.
So we use that from the more kind of standard delay stuff, but also if you want to do anything that's just really nuts, like really exaggerated, crazy, more psychedelic delays, it's really good for that. What else do we use?
Tremolator is a really good one.
Basically all of the Sound Toys stuff, all of it, every single thing. It's one of the best things we've ever bought.
Actually, Decapitator is a really good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if any of you haven't seen it, I'll just bring it in here. Decapitator.
It's quite fun to use as well. It's got the animations, right? The little
so where is it?
face.
Oh, that I think that might be a different one. Let's have a look. Where is it? Am I going mad? It's in my little section here. So the Decapitator is a really cool saturation and distortion plugin that emulates the preamps from. I'm going to get this wrong. I think A is for Ampex, so that's a tape emulation. E, I can't remember. N is Neve, so I think the 1073 that we looked at before. T, I think that's
is Eventside, isn't it? Is it Eventside?
Possibly.
Is the
T the Thermionic Culture Vulture? P, I mean, who knows? Maybe we're just making this up. N is definitely Neve. That's all I know. But this is great for just adding saturation and distortion as well. And there's one other plugin actually that we discovered last year, and that is Goldfloss. This is like an artificial AI intelligent EQ, and basically what it does
makes your whole track for you, and you don't have to do it.
Basically, unfortunately, the robots come and just like take over. Here we go. So you can use this on anything. This is on our master bus currently, and what it does is it applies in real time corrections to your EQ based on its interpretation of what's being fed into it. And it will make decisions or make suggestions based on a lot of historical data that I guess the programmers gathered when they were building this to determine what the human, this is my understanding of it, I might be getting this wrong, based on historical data that's based on what sounds good to the human ear. And it has just a few settings: tame, recover. Tame and recover are the two main things, right? So if I feed the whole track into this, and apparently it works best when you give it the most possible amount of information, if I just pull this back and I press play, if I push up tame, it's taming information that it's perceiving as being potentially overwhelming, and recover is boosting. and you can get it horribly wrong by overusing this. But what's quite nice is just using it subtly. There's other settings on there, including bias and brighten and boost. I won't go into the details of that. There's some amazing tutorials on YouTube. But basically, what we use this for in most cases is to bring out the clarity in sound. So it might be on the mix bus, it might to attenuate some of those kind of boxy frequencies or reduce harshness, or it might be on pads. So we use it a lot on pads to kind of bring definition in, don't we? To like attenuate some of those like boxy frequencies and lift the higher frequency content. But this is a really good, quite expensive plugin, which is worth investing in if you've got a ludicrous amount of spare change that you want to spend on.
Is it worth saying, probably worth giving another shout out to Universal Audio and just their plugins, because I mean there's so many. It's a bit like Waves. You've got like a lot of amazing emulations of plugins, but we use ones of note that we use all the time. That Lexicon reverb is amazing. It's so good for making stuff atmospheric, and the EMT. Should I just show a couple of the plugins? So, I don't know if you can see this. I'm just going to load up a couple of the plugins here. So, this Lexicon one that we showed beforehand is amazing. You've got the EMT one. We use this a lot. So, what would you say? This is like a plate reverb, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really good with vocals, really good with drums as well. I think that's what we mainly use it on, right?
Yeah.
It's really good, but yeah, it's just
particularly
incredible.
for vocals though. It's just got an amazing character to it.
Oh, another little secret weapon. This is a secret weapon one. Voice of God. So we use this on a lot of tracks. So this is really good. It's a bass resonance plugin. There's other stuff that you can get that does similar stuff. I think R-Bass in Waves does a similar thing, but it's just really good for adding a bit of heft to certain bits of low end information. If you guys want any more information on that, then let us know. Another little plugin we'll show you that we use a lot is the Moog multi-mode filter, which we showed beforehand, but we use this a hell of a lot. It's just got a really nice colour to it. It drives the track that you put it on a lot and gives it warmth. So I think you're
cool.
Don't know, any other plugins?
Oh, there's the pitch shifter from Waves.
Yeah.
Which is just it's a pitch shifter, isn't it? But it's the best one that we've used for sure, in the sense that unless you really abuse it, then it tends to be quite accurate. And I think a lot of other
usable, you can go quite far with it, and without putting the quality or like the usability of the sound.
Yeah,
you can make it sound like an Oompa Loompa with the wrong pitch shifter.
But it's quite nice for, like, let's say for example you've got a sound like, what's a good example that you want to give? A sound that you want to add harmonic character to.
Yeah, like a pad. It's really good if you've got if you've got a synth or a pad that you just want to experiment. What does it sound like an octave up?
Should we demonstrate, even if we get it wrong? What's a good sound to send it?
Maybe the strings. Yeah. Maybe do it with the Prophet strings, maybe.
Actually, or even just the main strings, because have we got some? Actually, no. Yeah, that could work.
Sorry guys, you've got the clip coming through the master.
I do.
Oh,
oops. Is that
yeah,
gone
that's
now?
gone. That's gone. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry if you guys were hearing a click there. So yeah, just an example. Have we actually?
Oh yeah, we've already got one set
I've
up.
already got one, so I'm going to put that up. So you hear that adds like just a really nice.
That's just an octave, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an octave. It's just got a certain feeling. So if you want to dial in certain things like that on stuff, or yeah, for example, if you then want to put on a Lexicon reverb after that, to show you on that atmospheric setting.
So that's just off Ascend with a pitch shifter, and you get these beautiful kind of.
So just to compare it,
Yeah.
that's what the sound's like beforehand, and just using a pitch shifter and a Lexicon reverb, you can make that
It's not too dissimilar from what you were describing in the oscillators, the sub-oscillators in the Moog as well.
Yeah,
Just
similar
having
concept.
a little octave layer that just gives it a nice texture.
Similar concept. So yeah, no, totally. So I don't know. And then one last thing is probably using like chains of plugins as well. So which is probably something we haven't really got into too much. But yeah, finding your favourite plugins, knowing what the specific uses, and then coming up with chains. So maybe like we did there, we did a sample into a pitch shifter into a Lexicon. You could then put that into a tremolo plugin. You could then put an echo boy on that. So again, if you've got any questions about that, we could talk for hours about that. So
George, you've asked about,
That's a good question, this one again.
do you tend to build an idea for a full track first and then dive into the details? Build an idea, getting things spot on with layering, etc. towards the end. So I'm going to just move something, or maybe it's just a random order.
Shall we read that out? So great insight, thanks guys. Do you tend to build an idea for a full track first, then dive into the details, i.e. getting things spot on with layering, etc. towards the end? Or maybe it's just a random order? Creativity can get messy.
It depends, I guess, again, doesn't it? Like, I mean, the process of writing, sometimes you get an idea that comes to you and you're quite sure straight away exactly what you want to do. And then other times it's kind of a bit of like exploration and seeing what you feel. And then there's always that reflective period, which definitely adds a massive delay to the creative process. When you get inspired, you put something down, you're all loving it, but you're in a particular studio mindset then, and you know, music is to be listened to without trying to criticize it, which is a habitual mindset of being being a producer. So
I think that's a really interesting
that
point,
dreamy
actually.
bit process outside of the studio is quite
But also,
integral.
so getting perspective, because I think the amount of times that we've written something, and I know I'm particularly guilty of this, I'll be like, this is it, this sounds amazing, we'll all get that kind of like buzz, we get really excited in the studio when we're writing, we're like, yes, we found it,
it's ever been created.
And then we listen to it the next day and it's like, oh, it's just a bit boring, isn't it? So you kind of, and I think being as frustrating as it is, like giving yourself space, coming back to something and being like, do you know what, it's not right, let's go back to the writing stage again. So I think creativity, I can agree with you, it can get messy, and I think the key has been for us is just enjoy the process of like writing more and more ideas until one
sticks. Undeniably it sticks, like you can't argue with it. There's not that little subtle thing. It's almost like akin to being, we talk about this a lot, being in a cinema and somebody eating popcorn really loudly, like it just takes you out the film. So you know you've got the right thing when you're not losing the moment. Another thing, just to add to something Dave said, just at the end of your question there about creativity getting messy, something definitely I would encourage, or we would encourage, would be to utilize your like voice memos app on your whether you've got an iPhone or an Android, just to kind of bypass that, what you described as like messiness of creativity, to kind of like have your ideas on you when you're outside the studio. When you're in the studio, you're always going to be thinking and dreaming different things, and if you don't have something to kind of compartmentalize it all, it's anxiety inducing. At least for me, I find like I'm hearing so many melodies, if I don't have a way to organise it to then bring the next day into the studio and discuss, it makes, definitely organisation and order 100% is a friend of creativity. Like, don't have a messy studio, tidy your space up.
I'd also like, the final thing on that question is maybe you not to get too bogged down in detail initially. So just make sure the idea is right. Just have fun. Get the idea right. Get the general get the general vibe down. Make sure that everything feels right, and then you can have fun with all the detail. It's really fun once you know that you've got the right kind of thing going on. Then you can just get as technical as possible with every single millisecond of the track. But
get the vibe down right first.
If you do that before you get everything else right, then it can just be messy, basically. So
it's all feeling before it's precision.
Exactly.
Get
the feeling right.
The best ideas will come to you when you're just out of the way of yourself.
Exactly.
That's a really important thing to say. Like, get out of the way of yourself and have fun with the process.
So Joshua, you asked about so when you approach mixdown, do you take a traditional approach and turn all the channels down and gradually bring them in, or do you tend to tweak as you go along? So we just tweak as we go along, really, don't we? We have a bit of I guess in an ideal situation, we'd mix at the end, wouldn't we? Right?
Yeah.
But we do a lot of mixing as we go along. But then we'll also, when we're getting carried away with the creative process, our project file become quite a mess, won't it? We'll just kind of like we won't care too much about organizing things and like pay too much attention to detail in terms of processing, and then we'll be like, right, let's mix it.
Yeah.
And then we mix it, and then at the other end we'll come up with some more ideas, which might involve taking it to pieces again.
Yeah.
So we kind of, it's something we're trying to avoid. And like I said, in an ideal world, we'd like to mix at the end, wouldn't we? But we're kind of in this like space between at the moment where we're having probably about 3 stages where we're like, right, let's mix it. And then kind of we'll start writing and things will get chaotic again. So do we pull all our faders down? No. Should we? Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest tip that we'd share would be the power of referencing.
Yeah.
And in terms of
Bouncing
like
as well.
the mixing process has got to be guided by getting perspective from good reference tracks. So that might be a song or 2 or 3 or 4 that you think feels right. Is perhaps like ideally in the same world as the track you're building, and reference. And what I mean by that is literally like using a plugin like this one here. This is called Metric AB. And what we've got here is we've got a load of random songs in there that we've been using to reference. So we've got, we've got our old track, Ascendance, in there, which we use as a point of reference. We used Rapture by And Me. And that's just for the kind of the ambience of the piano. Basically, this is a plugin where you can go back and forth, comparing the sonics. And this is an amazing plugin because you can focus on the sub, you can focus on the high frequencies in AB. It's got loudness comparisons between your reference track and the track your own track. So you've got like loudness levels, you've got dynamic comparison, you've got stereo image, your correlation, spectrums, which you can layer.
In fact, in terms of plugins, we were asked earlier on about plugins.
Yeah,
this would be
we couldn't live without. This is right up there because this, like, if you A/B effectively through your mix process, you can just make sure that the sonics of your track just feel right, and you don't get any surprises later on down the production process where you're just like, okay, something's not feeling right. You can just reference all the way through. So,
rigorously A/Bing, like focusing on like tiny details. That's something that's helped us a lot, isn't it?
Really helped us. Yeah, it's really, really integral.
Thank you for the love, Charlotte. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte.
And that actually brings us to Tim's question, which sort of comes off the back of that. Are there any tracks or artists in the last year that have particularly inspired you? So we were talking about the Metric AB. I guess we do pull other people's tracks into there to kind of just gauge what.
Yeah.
Anyone in particular?
Anyone in particular?
Everyone.
In the last year.
There's that one. I mean, an obvious one is that
Field of Light.
Field of Light. So it's just one, like, we really like kind of big filmic, groovy bits of music, and there's a track called Field of Light by Moritz
Hofbauer
and Harry Keyworth. And it's on Boris Bredger's label, and it's awesome. It's really epic. That's one track, which is a really, really amazing example. And something I love about that track is not just the vocal, it's the melodies, but it's like there's a real analog feel to the synths as well. It's just like big and real sounding.
It's kind of got everything in it.
What other big ones from this year? Like Sebastian Leisure, Stevie, that'd be one as well. That's amazing. So I think the thing that we will love about that is the groove and it's the vocal chops, right? Yeah. So like we really appreciate really imaginative vocals and
outside the box thinking and filmic, emotive alternative landscapes.
I've got a couple of people.
Go on.
DJ Seinfeld and Ross from Friends. I think in terms of like production levels, where you listen on headphones and it's so immersive, like the level of expertise that you hear in those tracks
they're up there.
is superior. It's like
a lot of the afterlife stuff as well, and Taylor Bastard, the obvious ones that inspire everybody, also important to draw inspiration from.
Yeah, for sure.
Anna,
inspiration. Anna,
in terms of like, again, like level of detail and technical ability. Like
John Hopkins.
So
we went to see John Hopkins live a few months ago, and it was just absolutely insane. Like the amount of detail, and just something I think we find very inspiring about him is the way you kind of someone who's able to make electronic music sound so organic and so like real and so just such a the mind tricks he plays with you with the music is just it's so inspiring. So he's definitely right up there, I think.
And music just outside of the genre that we kind of appear to work within, but we're appreciators of all types of music, really. I think that's it's good to have an open mind and get inspired by different genres that you might not even listen to. And you never know what you'll really stumble across when you're getting inspired and you're immersing yourself in different worlds. Increase the chance of those unique fusions. Classical stuff and whatnot.
Definitely.
So thanks, Sean. You've kicked off 2022 with a bang. Freefall was such a great track. Thank you very much.
Nice one, man.
What else are you hoping to achieve this year?
What are we hoping to achieve this year?
I think it's definitely selling out Wembley Stadium.
Just for starters, we're hoping
starting an airline.
Yeah.
Maybe EYNKA Airways.
Yeah.
I think just
I want to do an OnlyFans.
No.
Sorry.
I think lots more. I think one thing we're really passionate and excited about at the moment is just writing new music, and I think we feel like we're at the beginning of a really interesting pathway of a style that we've really found our feet with, and I think I know I'm personally looking forward to just writing more music with you guys.
For sure.
Getting some more music out there.
The main thing, the inspiration. I think, speaking, if I can speak broader, I seriously disagree. It's the feedback. It's those kind of comments. It's just seeing. As cheesy as it sounds, it's kind of the process of making music is so beautiful, it's so cathartic and really rewarding. And to be part of a team, we're friends as well. We kind of grew up together. It was really special for us and really nice. But also just seeing how music is such a bridge between people, such a connector. And when you hear feedback when someone's been inspired by your music, I think that's just such a magic thing. It's an irreplaceable feeling, really.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's amazing.
We need to get some gigs. That's one thing we're looking forward to. We're looking forward to coming out of our musical caves of solitude. And
we've got some, we've got quite a lot of material we're working on at the moment too that we're really excited about developing, and we know that's gonna, we just got an idea for how our sound's gonna develop and how that will translate live as well. So we've been playing around. We've got all this gear here. We're kind of starting to put together some more live stuff as well. Looking forward to playing out. We've got
another track. Another release coming out later on in the year with Stress, which we're really looking forward to, and we've just had a really intense week of just playing around with ideas, and that's really exciting. Trying to see, trying to break the mold a little bit and see how we can deliver something slightly different next time.
And there's some other stuff. Sorry to be really annoying, but we've got some really exciting news that we can't talk about.
It's one of those ones. It's one that would be really cool to share with you all now. Hopefully we will be able to soon.
But hopefully we can soon. Is there anything else that we want to... Has anyone got any more questions? Joshua, thanks mate. Thanks for joining us. Wicked. Has anyone got any more questions? Happy to answer any more questions anyone's got.
I wonder if unless we get some other questions in, maybe it's worth just playing after. Now we've talked about it and described it, we'll play the track out one more kind of playthrough, if anyone can endure listening to it all again. But just to sort of close out the live stream, maybe just by
Why not?
yeah,
Why not?
just kind of
Yeah,
having a think about the things we were talking about in context of actually hearing the track from start to finish.
Yeah,
Maybe
feel free
something.
to. Yeah, feel free to, if you've got any more questions to ask us. Otherwise, we will round things off.
Pretty much our bedtime, isn't it?
This is definitely.
But yeah, thank you all very, very much for joining us, and for those who stuck it out as well from the beginning to here.
Yeah.
Thank you for sticking with us in this first, hopefully not too awkward live Q&A thing. And yeah, we're really excited to continue sharing music with you as well.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
It's been fun.
It's normally the part of the news where they stare awkwardly into the screen. It's supposed to cut you out.
That's off the way.
Yeah, how do you end one of these things?
I think we do it now.
Not
Do we do that?
by saying let's play the track out and sit here all
Yeah, Josh, what are you playing at? They've heard it. They've heard it at the beginning.
Hi there.
Amazing. Thanks, George. Right, I think we will sign off.
Wicked. Yeah,
We will sign off.
Let's- let's
Thank
anyone
you.
finds
Thank you
it,
for joining us.
Yeah. Wicked.
And
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Cheers to Stress. Big up. Thanks.
Big up
It's
to
been
Stress.
a pleasure. Thanks.
Big
for
love
having
to
us.
Stress Records. Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
Nice.
guys. Thanks. Adios. See you next time. We wave to the camera.
Do we just press end?
There we